I'm Riley Reese. This is the Sophia Unfiltered podcast, where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. I'm grateful to talk to these brilliant minds and share their powerful stories with you. And I especially love listening to the conversations that are led by my friend and co-host, Lauren Deitch. Lauren is a health coach, a life coach, and a counseling practitioner. She's been part of the Sophia family since the early days. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. I'll let Lauren fill you in on her guest today.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sophia Unfiltered. I am Lauren Deitch, and today we are here with our guest, Dr. Rose Schlaff. She is an absolutely amazing person who works with individuals, couples, and small groups, and is all about creating simple daily rituals informed by physiology and sexy science. She helps her clients create ease and excitement surrounding intimacy, and she combines her years of experience as a pelvic physical therapist alongside her work in previous life with world-renowned sexual medicine physician Dr. Irwin Goldstein, and holistic coaching techniques to help address the physical, emotional, cultural, societal, behavioral factors, and all of the other things that impact desire, pleasure, and sexual wellness. Dr. Rose, I'm so excited that you're here. Let's get into it. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm great.
I just love reading your bio because it's like, so you're basically here to just help everyone just live their best life in pleasure and make connections that are meaningful and wonderful. And you just come from such an amazing background. So why don't you tell some of our listeners a little bit about your journey and how you came into your beautiful holistic practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for asking. Like many of us that end up in this space, this holistic space, had my own hormonal health blowups. So basically, I have always been that go-to friend that people talk to about sensitive or embarrassing topics, the ones that, I've never told anyone this, but I feel like I can talk to you. I've always been that person. And I feel like it's always been my secret gift to make the uncomfortable comfortable. And when I was starting my practice in physical therapy, I knew that pelvic floor physical therapy was exactly where I needed to be. It's where we talk about the most sensitive topics of the body, right? Issues with peeing, issues with pooping, issues with sex and pregnancy, postpartum, menopause. And I was living my best life in professional heaven, working with world-renowned sexual medicine physician, Dr. Irwin Goldstein, and sex therapists, myself. We would all evaluate the same patient who walked through the door and really was able to see from the inside what it looked like to look at the medical, the psychological, the mechanical, the physical factors that impacted sexual wellness. But I felt completely disconnected to my body at this time. I felt completely disconnected from my partner. I felt like the things that used to be pleasurable and filled with ease for me no longer were. And after working for over a year with doctors, specialists, mental health professionals, they had found some medical drivers of this. And after a year and a half, told me, hey, all your lab values are normal. Congratulations, you're fixed. And to me, it was a humongous punch in the gut because I was like, I'm a member of the medical community and you're supposed to fix me. You're supposed to help me. And I feel like a shell of the person that I once was. And I don't really know where to go from here. I felt like the medical system had betrayed me. I felt really gaslit by the medical system and really frustrated because I knew after talking to hundreds of women and people with uteruses in the clinic, I knew I wasn't the only person having these really invalidating situations with the medical system where, okay, you get to a certain point and you're just told, all right, you're quote unquote normal, or, okay, this is the way it is to have a uterus. This just is the way it is to be a woman. And I heard a lot of stories of clients who had pain and were just told, oh, try some wine and lube and go have some sex, or, didn't want sex anymore in their relationship and weren't really given any strategies. We're just kind of told, well, yeah, you're a woman. That's what happens. Or you're a mom now, or you're a parent now. Or even people who are having extremely painful periods that took them out of work and out of their life for multiple days at a time. Well, that's just the way it is to have a uterus and be a woman. And for me, I knew that I couldn't accept that. I knew that there had to be a way for me to feel good in my body again, to feel good in my relationships again, and actually be able to experience connection and pleasure like I did before this situation. And that's when I started searching. I studied a lot of things. I studied trauma, the nervous system, how our society impacts our nervous system and our bodies. I studied hormones. I studied relationships, communication. And through that journey of learning more about holistic factors, functional nutrition, I finally was able to come up with a system, one that was multifactorial, one that really addressed my lived experiences, the intersectionalities of my identity, and really allowed me to take simple daily steps to get me back to feeling good in my body, good in my relationships, having fun again, both in and out of the bedroom. And I started sharing that practice with my clients, and they started doing so much better. I was seeing that instead of just going from dysfunctional to functional, people were going from functional to thriving, not just feeling like they can tolerate sexual activity or tolerate conversations with their partner or tolerate activities. They were actually excited and having fun during it, or actually craving intimacy. And so that's where I am today.
It's so incredible because, like your story, so many women and those who identify as women, and there's such a taboo and a shame and a guilt around, well, my parts aren't working, or I don't know where to go with this. It says my labs are normal, or my doctor's telling me if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or, well, you're not worse or bad enough yet to have anything be concerned. But as a patient, that's really devaluing and very frustrating, because it's like you said, it's your lived experience. Like, that things aren't right and things could be better. And to have that sense of betrayal, like you said, where it's like, okay, like I'm not getting the answers and I know that they're out there. So maybe I need to start asking other people and other practices those questions. And there's such an empowerment behind that, where you're like, all right, like I can heal myself. And in healing myself, I can help others heal themselves. And I just think it's just so magical that you're taking on this purpose of sharing your wisdom with the world and inviting others to find that sense of empowerment through their own self-healing. And Sophia Health was started around that same premise, where it's like, okay, you know that there's something going on and you're searching for answers. Here are a plethora of other people who are here to support you and here to help you find that sense of self-confidence in pursuing your best health and feeling well again. I'm just so glad that you're here. Okay, so let's get into it, because I just feel like so many people are ashamed to have these conversations because, like you said, who are you supposed to talk to about this? You just became the unspoken go-to person because you held that space for others, that sense of non-judgmental, compassionate, welcoming presence, where it's like, you want to talk about orgasms? Let's talk about them. You want to talk about the fact that you have to pee every 30 minutes? Me too. Let's talk about it. Like, there's such like almost like these cultural myths in Western society where it's like, oh, you had a kid? Well, yeah, you're going to have to pee every time you have to jump. Or, oh, painful sex after the age of 35. Yeah, been there. I guess that's just something that we just accept as the new normal when there's so much more. So in your practice, what do you feel like are some of the most common things that your clients come to you and you're like, all right, let's break down the bullshit barrier? Like, that's not normal. I can help you.
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? No, but I really think so much of our sexual and pelvic wellness is a lot of misconception because we're not talking about these things openly in our society. And so most of us, the sexual health information that we have gotten is pregnancy prevention, right, in schools, or we've watched a lot of TV and movies about people, having missionary penetrative sex and orgasming simultaneously 5 minutes later. And we feel like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I'm taking too long, or why can't I orgasm like that? Or why doesn't it take me 5 minutes? Or, why don't I look at my partner like I see on TV and, just immediately want to jump them? Why a couple of years into my relationship, am I having trouble getting myself in the mood? Does that mean that there's something wrong in my partnership? Does that mean that I'm not attracted to my partner anymore? Right? Like, these are all common misconceptions. And once we start peeling back the curtain, peeling back the layers, and having these open conversations about, it's really common in long-term relationships to have a little bit of sexy stimulation. Like, you have to smell the food cooking to get an appetite, right? We have to kind of be in a sexy situation. We have to watch Highlander. We have to watch whatever we need to watch. We need to listen to a sexy audio story. We need to kiss our partner for a long time before we actually feel our body come alive and get excited about intimacy. It doesn't just happen after we've been toiling away at a to-do list for 7 hours and driving home and cooking dinner. And, our body doesn't just switch of like, oh, now I'm ready for sex, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Same with, pain or discomfort during sex. You don't need to have pain if you don't want to. And really understanding that penetration and orgasm, like, this is not the end all be all. And there's so much to intimacy that can be pleasurable, and to push through pain when we are not enjoying it, when we're not wanting to, because we feel like we quote unquote should to, be a good partner, a good wife, or whatever. There's a lot of pressure on us to be the good whatever. And knowing that almost 75% of people with vulvas have some pain or discomfort at some point in their life during sex. And about 33% continue to have pain or discomfort during sex. And that doesn't have to be the case. There's a lot we can do with hormones, with behavioral training, with muscle exercises, with hands-on techniques, with nervous system techniques to get you to a place where it's not just tolerable, it's actually pleasurable, and it feels good. But there's so much here. I could talk about this forever.
100%. Well, and like, I feel like you hit the nail on the head where it's like, it's what I call with my clients, the expectation station, where it's like shit hits the fan when you're in expectation station. And it's so difficult to not only be vulnerable enough to come to your partner to whom you're intimate with and be like, so, hey, I'm going to need a little about this. It's not you, it's me. Or, hey, I need to try this. Or, hey, can we switch this position? Or can we try this different environment, or whatever it is? Just because you care so deeply for the person with whom you're being intimate with, that you don't want them to make it like feel that they're at fault, or they're the reason that you're not quote unquote in the mood, or whatever it is. And it's also equally as difficult as the person receiving the vulnerable information to be like, okay, like, this isn't about me. Like, let me just shake this off, like, and listen and hold space. And especially if you are both wired differently from a love language perspective, like, I'm personally a physical touch love language, and my husband is words of affirmation. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, hun, like, let's talk about some things. And I have to be so cognizant of like making sure to really put on the words that affirm not only like his role as like my husband and my sexual partner and like his performance and all those things, but it'd be like, hey, like, it's, sometimes like this is the reality of the situation. Like, maybe we're not going to have an orgasm every single time that having sex and different things like that.
I love the question of redefining what does success look like as a couple, as an individual, right? And that's the biggest misconception of all, is like, I'm the only one and I'm broken. right? Where we're feeling like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me and I'm the only one experiencing this. And so whether it's sharing, hey, here's what I learned about the science of desire. And it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about physiology. It's about how most women and people with vulvas need to experience a little bit of something sexy to get in the mood. And doesn't mean I'm not attracted to you. Doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's just science, right? And it can really help destigmatize that and help you identify, okay, we are being successful. We're on the same page and we're working together.
Absolutely. Well, and I love the science experiment metaphor because it's like, it gives us permission to be curious and to test hypotheses and to test and experiment. And it invites a sense of playfulness back into that type of thing. And it also helps kind of remove some of those walls of shame around, well, like I'm broken or it isn't working correctly or it should be. Anytime the word should comes up, right? We should stop and be like, uh-oh, where's that expectation coming from?
Yes.
But I love just inviting a scientific approach to it where it's like, hey, like I want to read this book and I want to try some of these things out, or, hey, I want to, learn more about how to support you in this way. What can I do? What can we try? I just think that that's incredible because like you said, there's so many expectations that we walk into, and especially the way that some of the cultural and societal expectations have programmed us with, it's like, oh, well, you had a baby. Let's do Kegels. That'll help. I remember being a teenager and reading my Cosmopolitan magazine, and it was like all the rage in the early 2000s where it was like Kegels this and Benoit balls that and like Kegel, Kegel, Kegel. And then it was like 50 Shades of Grey came out and then everyone was buying Benoit balls. And it was like, all right. So as an actual professional pelvic floor therapist, talk to us about the Kegels and like demystify some of the things here.
I love this question. I always say that pelvic floor physical therapists have such a love-hate relationship with Kegels. And it is so important to have a pelvic floor muscle group that works just like any other muscle in your body, right? So just like my bicep, I need to extend it all the way to reach far away from me. I need to contract it all the way to be strong. And when I'm fully contracted, when my elbow is fully bent and my hand is on my shoulder, I'm not going to be as strong as when I'm kind of in the middle here, making this 90-degree angle with my arm. This is when I'm strongest. So really recognizing that a tight muscle is not the strongest muscle, right? The strongest muscle is a muscle that can lengthen, that can contract, that can move back and forth, that has mobility. And so if we're constantly thinking about, oh my gosh, I need to be tighter, I need to be tighter, I need to be tighter, which is, I think, the patriarchal BS message that we get as people with vulvas, right? Like, be tighter so you can pleasure someone with a penis. It's really important to note that if a muscle is tight, like, what a tight muscle feels like. It's not comfortable when it's touched, right? It's like sore.
100%. I'm like calling the chiropractor. I'm getting like booking something. I'm getting out the foam roller. Like, oh my God. Like when you have a tight muscle in your shoulders, you're like, okay, something's wrong.
Yes. And that's not, when we feel that tightness, we're not like, oh my gosh, I'm so strong. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed. What am I doing? I'm really holding a lot of tension there. And something to note here is many of us hold our tension in our pelvic floor, just like we hold our tension in our jaw or our shoulders. They've hooked people up to surface EMG and shown them scary movies or threatening movies. And they've seen that, okay, the first muscles to contract in your body are your pelvic floor and your shoulders. These are the most protective muscles in your body. And so when we are doom scrolling, when we're, driving, when we're rushing around getting shit done, this is when our muscles are probably going to be really active and on. And so many, many, many people actually need to learn how to relax their pelvic floor before they can start to strength train it. Because again, if we're stuck here with my elbow fully bent and my hand on my shoulder, I'm not going to be strong because I can't contract anymore. I'm at my end range of contraction. And so we want to make sure that we're fully relaxing before we start doing any Kegels. And then we also want to figure out, do I even need to do Kegels? Why am I even doing this? right? 95% of people with low back pain have some kind of pelvic floor dysfunction. And sometimes that's pelvic floor muscle weakness, but sometimes it's pelvic floor muscle overholding. And so the best way to find this out is by getting a hands-on assessment from a pelvic floor physical therapist near you. There are some signs and symptoms that I can identify, right? But a lot of them, it's hard to tell. Am I overholding or am I weak, right? Back pain could be from overholding, could be from weak. Pain with sex, probably overholding. Feeling constipated, not having bowel movements every day, that's probably overholding. If you're leaking when you cough, laugh, or sneeze, that could be either. Could be either overholding or weakness. And so even if you're postpartum and you're coughing, laughing, sneezing, leaking a little bit of urine, it still might be that your pelvic floor is overholding. So really important to get that personalized care, that personalized assessment.
I love that so much because I just feel like it kind of goes back to where our conversation started, where it's like so much of westernized approach to healthcare in general is going to one person and expecting that they have all of the answers. It's like the classic appliances in the kitchen where it's like, oh, well, here's the machine that does it all. It cooks, it cleans, it does this. And it's like, our healthcare is not a one size fits all thing. And I just feel like so much of being a woman, a person with a vulva, and we go through seasons, not just pregnancy, postpartum, being a mother, not being a mother, but like gravity, life, stress, so many different things impact us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is so bewildering to me is that there's this lack of self-compassion and understanding of looking at us in connection with the natural world, where it's like, just like the seasons, like we are going to ebb and flow and we're going to have some severe weather alerts, or we might have some days where we're in drought, or we might have days where we're freezing, or maybe it's a California beautiful 70s on the ocean. Like, you don't know, like we go through these ebbs and flows, and it can't just be an all or nothing approach. So if you are working with somebody, or somebody is beginning to ponder their pelvic health, really in general, what are some of the suggestions, or even just some of the questions? Because I think that so many people don't even know what questions to ask themselves to even begin to ponder whether or not they need to seek alternative or additional support.
Yes, absolutely. So I have so many things to say here. So from a pelvic health perspective, the big three things that we talk about, well, I'll say four. The big four things that we talk about are sex, right? Peeing, pooping, and then the surrounding areas, right? Your back and your hip. So questions for you might be, do I have pain or discomfort during intercourse? Do I have difficulty reaching orgasm? Do I have pain or cramping after orgasm? Do I have really painful, heavy periods? Do I feel like I'm constantly having to pee every 10 minutes, every 30 minutes, even every 2 hours, right? So when we're peeing, we should be going between, 6 to 8 times a day. And we should be urinating for 6 to 8 seconds at least, if not 8 to 10. And a lot of the time we're peeing for shorter periods of time, but we're going more frequently because we're not fully emptying, because our pelvic floor isn't fully relaxing. Am I leaking urine with a cough, laugh, or sneeze, or exercise? Am I pooping less than once a day and having a hard time pooping? Am I having to really push? These are all questions that you could be asking yourself for pelvic health. Do I have back pain? Have I gone to other physical therapists and not had my back or hip pain resolve? Maybe for years. I can't tell you how many people came to me after 6-7 years with other physical therapists. We worked on their pelvic floor, their back pain and hip pain resolved for the first time in almost a decade. And as far as, sexual health goes, the questions that I would be asking you are you excited about intimacy, physical intimacy with your partner? Do you feel pressure surrounding intimacy? Does it feel like you're checking something off your to-do list? Does it feel like it's really hard to get out of your head during intimacy? Does it feel like it's hard to switch your brain off? Do you feel like you wish you knew how to communicate what you wanted or what you needed, or even knew what you wanted or needed, both in the bedroom, but also in your relationship in a whole? Do you feel like you're constantly thinking about what you could do during intimacy to make your partner feel good instead of being in your own body and your own experience? That's kind of an indication that you might want to reach out and talk to somebody about your intimate health, your sexual health. So those are some questions that I might ask.
Oh my gosh. Listeners, I'm sure that you're sitting there and you're like, me. Like, as I'm sitting here, like Dr. Rose and I have talked about, like, I am one of those people that literally has to pee within 30 minutes of drinking liquid. And my husband hates it because we love to like road trip or go hiking. And it's like, we got to plan for it now. And it's like, no, like maybe there's something wrong. And I'll never forget, my brother-in-law and my sister were like, Lauren, I think that you should probably see a pelvic floor therapist. And I was like, that's for postpartum or pregnant people. And my little sister literally looked at me like, educate yourself. And then you and I meet like not even a month later. And I was
okay.
Like, I see you, universe. Like, all right. Like, incredible. Well, and just like, there's so many things that as I'm hearing you speak about it, and I'm like, man, like reflecting on my own journey, especially women and people with vulvas in their 20s, I'm like, oh my God, like misconceptions around sex and like making sure that we're performing and meeting unknown expectations of our partner. Like women, men, that's a misconception and an expectation that we can all relate to at some point, where it's like, are you enjoying it?
Yes.
All right. Like no one's going to stop mid sex and just be like, excuse me, can we get a like play by play? And like, can you give me like, that's not a very opportunistic conversation unless you diligently and consciously plan to have those conversations. And I would wager that talking to somebody who is professionally trained and as compassionate and open as you probably makes those conversations a little bit easier when you're ready to talk to your partner.
Yes, that's a favorite thing of my clients. They love coming up with scripts or practicing those conversations with me. I actually have a free resource. You can find it at bewellwithrose.com/talk. I can send you the link after, but it's a fill in the blank ad lib style guide for you to start the conversation about sex, because we really have not been taught any framework about how do we talk about what feels good? How do we talk about what we want more of, what we want less of? How do we do this in a way that doesn't hurt my partner's feelings or that doesn't make me feel like an asshole, right? And so having that guide can be really beautiful first, just to do it solo. So you can kind of get clear and reflect, what do I like? What don't I like? What's working? What's not working? And then to bring your partner in. And if there's awkwardness, if there's silliness, great, laugh. You can laugh at it. You can, make fun of me, the guide, make it weird. It's fun. And I think that we try to make sex so serious and take the silliness and the humanness out of it. And none of us want to feel awkward at all, but there's noises and there's smells and there's like things and there's sweat and we're human. And so it gets to be silly. It gets to be awkward. It gets to be weird, and we can have fun during that.
Listeners, we'll literally put this in the show notes for you on this like beautiful resource to like ad lib. And I think it's so important too, because it helps support the question and the self-reflection around, where did those misconceptions, let alone expectations, come from? Was it something I picked up subconsciously through pop culture, societal expectations? Did I get this from a book I read? Did this come from a message that I might have heard differently from a parent or from somebody in school? Like, there are so many interesting ways that we pick up these expectations that we very rarely voice, but hold our lives to. It's almost like a ridiculous hostage situation that we put ourselves in. And then B, our partners aren't even privy to it. Like, we're withholding information from our partners to whom we're sharing our body and our physical and emotional and mental beings with. And it's almost, it's just so interesting. I remember when my husband and I would speak with a therapist, and it was like, is there a reason why you keep saying, well, they should know. And it's like, but why should they know? Like, well, I told them. And it's like, 10 years ago. Like, you haven't changed in 10 years. And it's like, I just remember my therapist used to be like, you should probably think on that one. It's like, we have to invite permission to change. And going back to that natural curiosity, like, we have to give ourselves permission to be curious, to try new things, and to be curious to ask and advocate for something to look a different way. Just because you've tried the same thing for however many years does not mean that there is not a different way to do it. That is the whole beautiful piece about connection, is that there are infinite numbers of ways to connect and to perceive the world around us.
Absolutely. And I think that you hit something on the head, which is this, like, you should know, right? You should read my mind, but also this feeling of like, I don't want to tell my partner because I'm afraid I'm going to hurt them. And it comes from this really loving place of, I want to protect my partner. I want to protect their emotions. But what comes as a result is this major breakdown in intimacy, whether we're assuming that they already know, whether we don't want to clarify because we don't want to hurt their feelings. And what I find is so many of us just don't have the tools to start the conversation and practice the conversation. And once we have those tools to just have little conversations here and there, it's almost like if you're a clean as you go person versus like a sink full of dirty dishes person, right? Like, cleaning as you go, it's like it takes 3 minutes to rinse my dish and put it in the dishwasher. And then my kitchen's never really dirty, right? I never really have to tackle it. Versus the dirtier my sink gets, the more dirty dishes are in there, the more of a to-do it becomes, the more of like, oh my God, now I have to clean the kitchen. It's going to take me 20 minutes and I like really overdid it. And I should have been soaking that dish, but I really wasn't. And all of that resistance comes up. And so it's just about like clean as you go conversations where we're just cutting out any assumptions. We're just making the implicit explicit. We're creating such clarity, and clarity is kindness, right? I think Brene Brown says something along the lines of that, which is clear is kind. And it is the key to maintaining intimacy. And so I think it's just a practice. None of us learned these skills growing up. So we're all learning together.
I couldn't agree more. Well, and I think too, it's one thing to be coming from this place of protection, love, and like all of these beautiful traits that so many people have. But the flip side of that is, are you deceiving your partner? And are you withholding information? And how would you feel if that was your experience, is that your partner is withholding information or doesn't feel safe enough to talk to you about what it is? You would feel hurt. You would feel like we're trying to protect these people that we love so much from these expected conversations that are hurtful, but it's truly the lack of communication and the lack of vulnerability that's actually creating the thing that we're trying to protect them from.
Yes. And human brains are wild, y'all. You know, when you feel that intuition that your partner isn't telling you the whole truth. And what does that spiral your brain goes through? What does that feel like? All the dark places you go to, right? Oh my gosh, maybe they're not attracted to me anymore. Maybe they're mad at me. Maybe I did something wrong, right? There's so many stories that we tell ourselves. And that's what happens in that cavern, that breakdown of intimacy. It just gets filled with stories and myths and misconceptions. And it makes it that much harder to reconnect and that much harder to be vulnerable because we're guarding ourselves even more from the scary stories that we're telling ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that it's almost like a programmed survival mechanism to compartmentalize aspects of our life. And I feel like so many of us, unknowingly or knowingly, have started to compartmentalize our health and aspects of our body. And so it's one of those things where it's like, well, my sexual health is not where I want it to be. And I'm just going to accept that that's just the way it is. I'm over the age of 50 and that's it. The rest of my life's fine. I'm at a healthy BMI and I eat mostly well. And that part of my compartment over there is great. And I just feel like there's such this disconnection between our whole health. And so one of the things that I know that you specialize with working with your clients is that it's a holistic experience, that your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, and your physical well-being are all combined. So did you want to speak a little bit more on that? Because I know you started to touch on it a little bit with like, well, maybe you're thinking about the dishes or the kids and you can't just jump into something.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so much. So I am a science nerd, a physical therapy nerd first, always. And for me, I see things through a nervous system lens, a science-based lens. And so when I think about our nervous system, this is really when it makes it clear how many other things can impact us. So our nervous system, in my mind, we've got, two categories, right? The fight and flight, sympathetic nervous system, kind of go, go, go. This is also our get shit done nervous system. It's how we take care of our to-do list. It's what we're on when we're driving and making sure that nobody's coming into our lane. It's what we're in when we're cooking dinner or cleaning. It's what we're in for most of our day. And then our parasympathetic nervous system, that's our rest and digest. And really, when we think about where sex probably fits in here, when we're thinking about arousal, if we're running from a tiger or fighting for our lives, our brain isn't going to say, you know what would be a great use of this blood and energy? Let's send it right down to your genitals and make you super horny so that you lay down and make a baby right now. It's like, no, it's going to go straight to your heart, to your arms, to your legs, to protect you, to keep you safe so you can fight and run. And so knowing, okay, where is my nervous system at? How can I identify when I'm in a restful state, when I'm in a freeze state, when I'm in a fight state, when I'm in a flight state? And being aware of that is huge, but also being aware that there are other things that can trigger that fight and flight that can make our body feel less safe, whether that's deadlines, whether that's, oh my gosh, I didn't sleep well. And so now my tolerance, my capacity is just lower, right? Maybe I'm eating something that is unknowingly triggering an immune response and telling my body at a cellular level that I'm not safe and that there's an immune attack happening, right? There's all these different pieces that can impact our nervous system and our feeling of safety that is necessary for us to get aroused, get in the mood, and be present for intimacy. And so I have these conversations. I talk about, what does your body feel like, right? At the end of the day, does it feel like you have a ritual to shift out of that go, go, go mode and into a rest and relaxed mode? Do you feel like your work is set up in a way where you can take breaks and you can decompress? Do you feel like you have enough help at home and in work so that you can take a minute to come down and you don't feel like you're putting out fires every 2 seconds? What helps you feel safe? Is it a clean kitchen? Is it, somebody else taking care of your kids? Is it that you just took a bath after work? Is it listening to music? Is it getting a massage? What helps you shift into that place? And so just knowing what I'm eating, what I'm sleeping, the choices that I'm making during my day, the media that I'm consuming, all of that, our brain is really, really smart. And it's the most important piece of our nervous system. It's the decision maker. And it's the one that's saying, yes, you're safe. You can chill out and get horny, or no, you have to fight and you have to run and we're in survival mode. And so I think that's a really key thing to understand.
Well, and I think too, even if it's not even about our sexual well-being and just thinking like, as you're sitting here and explaining these things, it's like, oh yeah, like if I'm like, oh, I gotta pee, like, and I'm on autopilot or I'm subconsciously or consciously stressing out my nervous system. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to like pee really, really quick. And then like, okay, go. And then like 30 minutes later, it's like, I got to pee again. Well, like no wonder, like you're not fully relaxing your pelvic floor and allowing yourself to fully release your bladder and like just have some peace. I know there's so many moms that listen to the podcast and they're like, hey, my child like is like breaking in through the door, like my dog's like coming in as I'm trying to go to the bathroom, or they were constantly bombarding our nervous system with something that might seem just so minute. But to your point, it's like, just ask yourself and get more self-aware and curious about like, could this be contributing? And just knowledge is power, right? We're not saying like, all right, well, just eliminate the distractions and eliminate the stresses. It's like, we can't all just go to a retreat in Bali and not have any responsibilities or problems. But it's one of those things where it's like, let's just be aware and then just start questioning it. Because I think that so many of us run on autopilot and don't even recognize what's going on. Like you were saying, it's like, when do you feel relaxed? Just a simple question of like, are you present in your body right now? Or are you stuck in your head worried about tomorrow or the past or whatever?
I love the question of 5%, right? Like, what would make me feel 5% more pleasure right now? What would make me feel 5% better in my body? What would make me feel 5% happier right now? What would make me feel 5% more relaxed or at peace or safe, right? And maybe it's, they've seen in studies that they put people in an MRI machine and were studying orgasm. And the people who asked for fuzzy socks to be a little bit more comfortable, this was like a funny study, but the people who wore fuzzy socks had better rates of orgasm. They were more easily able to orgasm because they were 5% more comfy, cozy, safer, right? Just with the fuzzy socks. And so there are simple shifts that we can make. And even if our kids are banging on the door when we're in the bathroom, maybe it's that first second before the kids bang in. Okay, maybe I take a deep breath. And that's the only time I have, but I'm taking a deep breath. Or, maybe I'm just creating something for after the bathroom where we're playing something together that makes me happy, or I'm playing music that makes me happy. And it's very small, it's very subtle, but it can add up and really compound to impact your nervous system in a positive way.
I just love this because that's truly how we cultivate sustainable change. So much of our mindset that we've been programmed to believe is that it has to be all or nothing. And I'm one of those people that's like highly sensitive, and I'm like very freaked out about like fluctuations in temperature or my environment. And it's like, I love your question of 5% more. Just asking yourself takes 1 second in your brain internally, just be like, okay, what would give me 5% more of whatever I need in this moment, whether that's safety, whether that's joy, whether that's peace, whatever it might be. And it does not have to be extreme. It's, how do you get a blizzard? It's tons and tons and tons and tons of individual snowflakes, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, we can just empower ourselves by taking these minute, tiny little moments. So many people are like, well, it's not going to add up, or it's not going to cultivate change, and it's not going to be immediate. And it's like, you're right. One snowflake does not cultivate a blizzard. Like, acknowledge that it does take that consistency compounding over time to lead to the changes that you're hoping to see. And then it's so funny too, because one day you're like, I haven't had to pee in like a while. Yeah. So, and I feel like so many people don't like sit and have that gratitude practice grounded in terms of like, oh, I am making, like, we're so quick to recognize the negative, but we're very few and far in between to like be like, oh, everything's amazing.
Yes. I love a gratitude practice. I want people to hear from this conversation. Yes, a lot of things can impact your nervous system, but your nervous system is so fluid and so changeable. And if you've ever had that experience of music in your car at night and like having a blast, a great time, the music sounds great, going into your house, waking up the next morning, going into your car and getting your ears absolutely exploded by the music, and it's painful. You can see that's one night. My nervous system was desensitized to the music the night before. It felt pleasurable. The next morning, I was sensitized to it. It felt painful. And so it's quick. And same with the peeing, right? Like, we're doing small steps. Even 5 minutes of delay can add up. And, it's those small steps that can slowly desensitize our nervous system and slowly change our nervous system. But it is working. And we're human, we are cyclical, and sometimes we're not even consistent. As long as you keep going, be erratic, be inconsistent, be imperfect, just keep going. It'll add up.
I love that. And it's just such a more empowering message for people who are trying to navigate their own exploration with their own physical health and sexual well-being, where it's like, like, I'm going to try this one thing. Didn't work out for me. I'm going to try something later on when I have some more energy to do it. Or like, I'm going to try this thing over here. Or I'm going to ask for this, or I'm going to just journal about this, or I'm going to find somebody who's not just my normal primary physician and get curious and go and ask for some specialty care or find free resources that are around me that I have access to.
Absolutely. And just knowing that all of those small steps are adding up and really celebrating yourself along the way. We're teaching our nervous system with each of those small steps. Hey, I'm safe here. Hey, I can do this. Like I can feel more confidence. I was just listening to someone talk about courage is more important than confidence, right? The courage to take those action steps, even when it feels uncomfortable, because confidence comes with experience. If you wait until you're confident, you're not going to take those small action steps. So the small steps add up to that confidence.
Dr. Rose, I just feel like you are all about empowerment and self-compassion and joy. And just like your bio, you are inviting pleasure in every aspect of your life. I just love this so much. I have found that along my own well-being journey, that I was angry about not finding out information so much later in life than it could have just like transformed my life so much earlier if I would have just known this one thing, or like if this would have been taught in schools or whatever it is. So is there one thing that you can leave our listeners with today where you're like, all right, if I can empower you with any nugget of knowledge that changed my life radically that I wish I would have known earlier?
Oh my God. Well, first off, I have had two major health situations. I learned a lot from both of them. I am grateful that I had them because they did give me this information that I know now. So as I'm reflecting on your question, I'm like, I wonder if I don't know if I would do it differently. But what I will tell you is what I know now, which I really benefited from knowing, is one, I learned how to check in with myself. I think as people who are socialized as females, we really become deeply attuned to what other people need, what other people feel, what other people want. We become very deeply attuned to caregiving and showing up and being empathetic and leading with empathy. And I think it's a superpower, but I also think that oftentimes we do it at the detriment of our own health and well-being. And I certainly was. Prior to my first big health situation, I was overgiving chronically. I didn't realize how depleted I was emotionally and physically. And I really didn't know how to even check in with myself. I didn't have any self-intimacy because I was so other focused. I was so focused on everyone outside of me, what they needed, how I could be a good friend, how I could be a good daughter, how I could be a good partner. And so I think that has been one of the most transformational things for me, is shining the spotlight, not out, but in first. And I still keep my empathy. I still obviously care deeply about the people around me. I am a huge, I love my friends. I love my community. And also I know how to check in with me first. And it's avoided so much resentment. It's avoided so much, so many miscommunications. It's kept me physically and mentally so much healthier. And so I would say that's the first piece. The second piece that I would say is really just once you have that information about what you need, what you want, the practice of sharing that, right? And having that courage to speak up and go against the grain and set those boundaries that sometimes make people unhappy. And just knowing that what's on the other side of those boundaries, that really, really scary thing that you have to go through where you have to break down that pattern of people pleasing. I'm like talking to my past self right now, but like, I cannot tell you, I have this video on my computer from years ago of right when I first started setting boundaries. And it's me dancing around in penguin pajamas and a Mardi Gras t-shirt to Bad Reputation, because I was so flooded. My nervous system felt so unsafe setting a boundary. It was the worst possible feeling in the world because I was so terrified that I don't even know what I thought would happen, but I just was terrified to hurt another person. I always was the one, okay, you know what? I'll just deal with it. I don't want to hurt someone else, so I'll just deal with it. And that moment, that video, I watch it often because that version of me that started setting boundaries, I didn't have true intimacy before that moment. Because when you are hiding your truth, when you are swallowing your feelings, when you are not setting those boundaries, when you're not being open and honest with the people in your life, you cannot have true intimacy. And so I think I would say that, which is, you think that you're doing this for the greater good, but it's actually hurting both people. Or, you know, if it's a multiple person relationship, it's hurting everyone in the relationship because it's a breakdown of intimacy to not share your truth.
Just so beautifully said. And it like empower through self-awareness and through coming from a state of overflow, not underflow. Oh, Dr. Rose, thank you so much.
It's so different, you know, offering someone support from a desire, right? I want to do this, not I should do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think just even it goes back to your first point of like self-awareness, right? Where it's like, am I doing this for myself or am I doing this for somebody else's best interest? Self-awareness, empowerment, and coming from a place of overflow. It doesn't get any better than that. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you, how they can find you.
Yes, absolutely. So I hang out on Instagram at Be Well with Rose. So I really love it when people slide into my DMs, let me know what you took away from this conversation, what really resonated with you, what you want to hear more about. You can also go to my website, bewellwithrose.com, all spelled out. And I offer free 20-minute consults because so many of us don't know what's out there, especially in the world of pelvic and sexual health. And so I oftentimes will tell people, if I can't help you, I have always, you know, I'm sure there'll be one person where I have no idea how to help them, but I always have someone who can. I have a great referral network. I really believe in building out a team, and I can point you in the right direction where we just don't get information about how to help ourselves here. And I also have an upcoming group opportunity to work with me. So if you are a woman or a femme leader who wants to reconnect with your body, feel more confidence in your communication, feel actually excited about intimacy, and just experience more pleasure and power both in and out of the bedroom, I think that you're the greatest person to hang out with me. And my groups usually have a combination of a live component so that we can have a community aspect. You can hear other people sharing their experiences that are most likely things that you can resonate, which is cool. The number one thing I hear from people one-on-one is, I felt like I was the only one. I thought I was the only one experiencing this. And so that community piece is huge. We also have individual support and a private podcast of training. So for that, you can get a discount of 10% with code Sophia, which I'll link below. And yeah, I would love to hear from you. I'm just so honored to be here. And I want everyone to feel really good in their body, really good in their communication, and feel excited and open about intimacy. And so if that's something that you want, I want you to know that it's never too late. You don't have too many kids. You're not too old. You haven't been in your relationship for too long. It is never too late to feel excited, to easeful, connected, confident, both in and out of the bedroom. That's so possible for you.
Yes, it is, especially now that we know you. Love it. Be Well with Rose. You heard it here. Dr. Rose, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your joy, and just your pleasurable little wisdom.
Yes, it was an honor. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Sophia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sophia Health. I'm your host, Lauren Deitch. If you're interested in connecting to wellness professionals that can offer one-on-one support, visit sophiahealth.com or connect with us, our community, and providers anytime on social. If this episode resonated with you at all, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was from the episode, or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights. that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform the way we take care of ourselves.